Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's Miami Open catch-up,
Alcaraz and Draper suffer early exits.
Andreeva and Keys depart as Raducanu shows form.
And the PTPA files a lawsuit on behalf of the players against the ATP and WTA tours.
Kim, Chris, today is the 24th of March, and we are here to catch up on the week in tennis at Tennis Weekly HQ, brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group. We've reached the midway point of the Miami Open, and it's been another eventful first week with newly minted Indian Wells champions Jack Draper and Mirra Andreeva suffering surprise early exits, along with a whole host of big names, including Holger Rune, Madison Keys, and Daniil Medvedev. And it's been just as eventful off court with the Professional Tennis Players Association, the PTPA, announcing a lawsuit against the tennis governing bodies, including the ATP and WTA tours. We'll be delving into all the fallout from that dramatic news earlier last week in the second half, along with discussion of strange head-to-head records in honor of David Goffin. But more on that in a bit. Guys, it's been a roller coaster of a tournament so far out in Miami. And who would have thought Emma Raducanu, the last Brit standing?
She's come good, hasn't she? Of late, some fantastic wins. And how much further could she go?
I'm just going to say it now. I'm
getting ahead of myself.
I'm getting ahead of myself. US Open vibes.
Well, I mean,
did you forget the year then, Joel?
Was it 2021?
2021, I think.
It was indeed.
Wow.
But the last time we got ahead of ourselves was probably last week, where we thought Jack Draper was going to win everything and a Grand Slam.
Yes.
So maybe we should have err on the side of caution when it comes to Emma this time.
We're not known for our good predictions, are we? But I did want to mention, Joel, and forgive us if you don't want our listeners' name, but you did pass a milestone of your own last week, I think.
Did you?
Celebrated by some woo-woos, I think.
Yes.
Yes, it was my birthday last week. So, I had a very nice evening. It was last Thursday evening. And it is, I wouldn't say it's a happy milestone. It's
You're not 17
Another
like Mirra
year,
Andreeva.
Yeah.
No.
I'm now closer to 40 than to 30.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so is
Giving the
Novak
game away.
Djokovic.
How
and
can I
he's
look at this
playing.
positively?
Novak Djokovic, exactly. Andy Murray. Maybe you'll have a career resurgence, you know.
Older but wiser.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Although, look, judging from my predictions for Miami, that does not ring true.
Older but
I hope
older.
you had a nice,
But older.
I hope you had a nice evening, Joel, and hope you still had time to follow what's been going on in Miami and everything that's been going on that's caught our attention. I mean, I'm going to jump in on here first because away from Miami, I saw that Wimbledon had announced their official kind of, it's 100 days to go. Here's our tournament poster, which has been designed by a British graphic designer called Sarah Madden. And it's very horticulturally themed this year. It's called Tennis in an English Garden. And I love it, actually. I think it's one of the best posters they've done in recent years. I love all the flowers and the foliage at Wimbledon. And this one really showcases that. I think it's sort of seems like it's set in court 2 from an angle up high. Lovely purple colours.
So
green
Chris,
lawns.
Kim,
I'm excited.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a horticultural novice.
Oh.
Can you identify any of these flowers that are in?
It's giving
the poster?
hydrangea. Hydrangeas.
Petunias, I think.
I would give
in there as
that.
well.
Are they like
You've got to know
dyed?
the butterfly.
They're like the
butterfly,
Wimbledon
Joel.
purple. That's not a hydrangea normal color, is it?
No, you can get purple
Is it you can
hydrangeas.
get purple?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the white colour is on the other side. That's something that's maybe... Please let us know if you think you can identify more than we
All the
can.
colours. Yes. All
But
the
I mean,
flowers.
it does look very, very relaxing. It's kind of giving quite lavender vibes, you know, which I don't necessarily...
It's quite spa-like, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah.
The reality of Wimbledon is a lot of people, hot and heavy, bustling. So I don't know if there was a spa somewhere in Wimbledon, that'd be quite nice.
They're quite
to retreat
spaced
to.
out and they're kind of sitting in some foliage, which I don't think is what's normal there.
I would have
It's not
loved,
reality.
No.
I would have loved if because it's a lovely photo and they've got the blue sky in there with a bit of cloud. I would have loved if they had like a nod to like was it the hawk? the Wimbledon
Rufus,
hawk.
the hawk.
Rufus the
Yeah.
hawk kind of flying over. I thought
little
that
purple
could have been a
hawk.
nice touch. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll
Yeah,
pass
or
on the
just maybe
feedback.
like a rain cloud and some showers,
Oh,
umbrellas
that would have been
going
more
up.
appropriate.
Purple
They could
rain.
have had a wet and a purple rain. They could have done the
Yeah.
Prince vibe. They could have had a wet and dry version.
Yes, that's actually quite
Oh,
needed.
roof on, roof off.
Umbrellas would be nice.
Precisely. But we are less than 100 days to go till the championships, so it's
Mm.
very exciting. I know a few people have been, getting their ballot tickets, and it's all very exciting. So very much looking forward to the grass. But we do have Miami to talk about, and plenty of tournaments and the clay season before then. But what's been getting your interest lately, Joel? I'm going to come to you. Anything that competed with your birthday for amusement in the last week?
Well, it does involve two Wimbledon champions, Andy Murray and Novak Djokovic, because Novak Djokovic put on his Instagram stories, he let us in to a little bit of inside the camp around his match preparations, and it turns out he's doing kind of like a rather intense board game session with Andy Murray.
Oh, is this a coach player competition?
Yeah, I think it's a
Tennis
bit tongue in cheek.
Yes.
I don't even
Teaching
know
him strategy.
the board game. I'm looking at it. I don't know what board game it is.
It looks a bit like Cop It. Does anyone remember Cop It?
I think it's Ludo because
Ah.
the different colours. I mean,
the
I haven't
arrows
played Ludo
going in the centre. We'll
years,
put it on our
but
social media. I do think
what
it's
is
Ludo.
Ludo?
Ludo
great
actually
fun,
in
very
Latin
aggressive.
And who
means
won?
I play.
Who won?
Well,
Based on what I can see,
dunno.
I don't think they actually played. But Joel,
No
this
one's
does
a
gives
winner.
you hope. They're
it's a staged
both
photo.
close to 40 than 30. Maybe board games are in your future, Joel.
Here's
Maybe-
another board game.
Yeah.
Maybe next time we all meet in person, we need to break out the Ludo. We need to do our own. We need to do our own like podcast recording preparation. It's a game of Ludo.
We could also get the Lego out, a la Krejcikova.
Yes.
Yeah. I can bring some back from Denmark for you. I'm sure I can do that.
A home
Yes.
of Lego.
What, from Lego HQ?
Literally Lego HQ, slightly outside Copenhagen. But I mean, I'm not necessarily focused too much on what's happening in Miami because I'm looking ahead because in what I think should be called a section or corner, I'm once again commenting on the former, now no longer former, very much an active player. Elise Cornet is coming back within a year. She's back. She's announced she's returning to the tour. It's called Le Comeback, which I think means the comeback. I'm thinking, can't be sure. And she's playing at a 250 event in France in a couple of weeks. So that didn't last long, and we did see that she was practicing. Thoughts on this one? She said, "You thought you'd got rid of me, but it's not quite the case yet."
So
Isn't she on the Traitors or supposed to
She
be on the
is, yes,
French
that was my last
Traitors?
update, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
yeah, this is a
So-
strange publicity tour for the Traitors.
Oh, I don't know. I think that would be a long shot, but I do think that she's busy, she's booked, and she's actually going to come back and play tennis.
Is this like her Eurosport contract is coming to an end? Who will partner with Mats Wilander?
Oh, she's trying to oust Elise Lim, do you think? This could be part of the plan. Well,
Oh, sorry, I've got my Elises.
You've got your Elises
I've got
mixed
my
up, yeah.
Elises mixed up here.
there are quite a few. aren't
Elise
there?
Cornet is not Elise Lim, Joel. Get with the
My
program.
bad. Here
Less
we go.
wins over Serena
Okay,
Williams,
older,
that's for sure.
Definitely not wiser.
Yes.
I've regressed.
This episode is brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group.
The leading provider of travel, hospitality, and customer experiences at global sporting events, including this year's Roland-Garros.
By booking with Sports Travel and Hospitality Group, tennis fans around the world can witness the pinnacle of the clay court season unfold, all the while indulging in luxurious hospitality that only Roland-Garros can provide.
As an official agent of Roland-Garros, Sports Travel and Hospitality Group guarantees you unrivaled views from the best seats in the house on Philippe Chatrier, as well as world-class cuisine and beverages served on site.
With Sports Travel and Hospitality Group, you also have access to the matches of your choosing, with 3 package tiers available across the entire tournament.
Learn more and book your Roland-Garros hospitality package today at sportstravelhospitality.com/Roland-Garros. That's sportstravelhospitality.com/Roland-Garros.
So what are you waiting for? Secure your premium seat at Roland-Garros today for a once-in-a-lifetime Grand Slam tennis experience.
The link is in the description.
Let's move on to Miami and save Joel from further embarrassment. Miami's been quite different, I think it's fair to say, to Indian Wells, with all 4 semi-finalists from Indian Wells already going out. Jack Draper, Holger Rune, Carlos Alcaraz and Daniil Medvedev. Let's start with Jack Draper, first of all. He just won Indian Wells. He's up into the top 10. You know, everything was going swimmingly, but he did lose to Jakub Mensik in straight sets in the second round here in Miami. 7-6, 7-6. It was 2 tie breaks. Jakub Mensik has had some big scalps so far in his young career. So on reflection, perhaps not the biggest upset in the world, but Joel, coming to you, what did you make of Draper out in Miami sort of after that fine, fortnight he had in California?
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show how hard it is with these kind of back-to-back big events, how much of a challenge it is, I think, to kind of keep up that energy, keep up that level of tennis across like these both tournaments. We saw that with Draper. We're going to talk about it later. We saw that with Mirra and Andreeva as well. But to be fair to Mensik, I mean, he is a player who's got a big ceiling, I think. We saw particularly on his serve how good some aspects of his game are. I mean, he sent down 21 aces in his match against Draper, and arguably he doesn't really get the noise, I think, or the plaudits as a teenager. I mean, he's 19 years old, as some of the others kind of cohorts around him are getting. There's a lot more noise, I feel, around Fonseca, Draper, and he's going under the radar a little bit. But when it comes to kind of match play, shot making, and his record against kind of top 10 players, it does speak for himself. And it does make me think that although, he's a player, I think around kind of 50 in the world at the moment, I think he's going to be making big leaps forward. And it's sort of just kind of waiting, I think, for maybe having a tournament like Jack Draper did in Indian Wells.
He's your pick, isn't he, Kim? Remember? Pick of the year?
Yes, for the start of the year. Yeah. I mean, he's only 19, big future ahead of him. He has a winning record over top 10 players, including now, obviously, Jack, who is now in the top 10. But I mean, Chris, do you think it was just a case of it catching up with Jack Draper, all of, last week, tiredness, scheduling, just too much to expect of him second time around?
We probably have to take some responsibility because we did get on the hype train. I do think we are aware that it's so hard to back up a big win. The Sunshine Double has been done quite a number of times by a certain type of player, though. I think it is someone who is much more seasoned. It tends to be not normally your breakout to win both. But having said that, I mean, if someone is slamming down 21 aces or above 20 aces, it's going to be so hard, only able to kind of craft 2 break points. And it is a case when you get into some of these tie breaks, you're probably going to be, well, not the favorite when you play against such a big server. So I don't think we can read too much into it. I think it wasn't like he completely, self-destructed at all. That was not the case. It was very competitive. There were some great rallies. But obviously, when something like that happens to you in Indian Wells, like a career-defining moment, producing your next best level or staying at that level is really challenging. So I don't think we have to be worried. But at the same time, I do think he probably would have expected a little bit more from himself and would have wanted a bit more having won the title last week.
Yeah, no reason to panic at the moment. I mean, another young player, João Fonseca, also won through against Ugo Humbert straight sets, but their match actually caused a bit of disruption for a Draper and Mensik's match. They had a bit of a stoppage in the second set because the Fonseca Humbert match was moved from the court that they were playing on to the main court, meaning all the Brazilian fans that had got themselves a nice seat were not happy and had to kind of stampede over to the other court, which, was very disruptive. And they had to kind of call time on the Draper match until all the fans left. The fans actually had to upgrade their tickets and pay an extra $10 each, which, I mean, I wouldn't have been happy with that as a Brazilian fan, but you do have to expect some schedule changes, don't you? But I mean, what did you make of that? Do you think that was the right move to make?
No.
By the organisers? No,
it was just total. I mean, it was just total chaos, and I completely understand the situation that the Brazilian fans were in, because they were, waiting to see their man. I think, some of them had been waiting in the stands for like 4 or 5 hours. I think we've all been there. And then to be told kind of last minute on the tannoy, oh, by the way, the player you're seeing is being moved to a court your ticket doesn't have access to. And on top of that, you're going to have to pay extra to get in. I can understand their frustrations completely.
It didn't seem right, did it? It almost feels like it doesn't make sense, especially because they've been so vocal on that court the entire day. It was already making reports they were chanting for their player as early as like the first match of the day. And there were hours left before they would be seeing him play. So you feel like it doesn't make sense from a fan perspective. You do want matches to finish, hopefully within a respectable time. But I think this was more because other matches had finished early. So it made sense to swap it. To give the stadium court a bit more for their money. But at the same time, I do think that causing the disruption, it was always going to do that. It was always going to cause carnage. And you do just think that some decisions should be fan first, and this definitely wasn't.
Well, maybe they'll learn from that. I don't know. Let's have a look at Carlos Alcaraz because, well, this was a bit more of a shock defeat, I think. On Friday, Carlos Alcaraz losing in 3 sets to David Goffin.
Legend.
Player, who we know well. Goffin's been around a while, but he's not, currently in, the top 30. He's not someone we would have expected to have upset Alcaraz. And yeah, Alcaraz not at the races. We'd all predicted him to win Miami, and this is the kind of type of tournament without a Sinner present that you'd expect Alcaraz at this time of the year just to kind of rack up. And he's really not having a great season, very inconsistent. 4 losses now in 19 matches. What was it that enabled Goffin to get the win over Alcaraz? Joe, I know you're quite a fan of Goffin, so I'm going to come to you on this first.
I mean, this is incredible because David Goffin now has a winning head-to-head record on the tour against Carlos Alcaraz, 2-1. And this is a player who, I was watching in Wimbledon qualifying rounds, last season. So for him to kind of go up against Carlos Alcaraz, come through in 3 sets, I think one of the things that was impressive was his first serve. I mean, he was serving at 65% first serves in. I think that would have given a lot of confidence on his, in his service games. And you can see he was kind of ready to attack the Carlos Alcaraz game. And as much as I think that helped, it was also kind of, I think, combined by the fact that Alcaraz, he was just making errors that you just do not expect Carlos Alcaraz to make. And it did make me wonder, like, in these moments where he's just expected to win comfortably, I do wonder if he puts too much pressure on himself and it's having an adverse effect on his game, because this is not a match he should be losing, but just the manner of it and the errors that he was making, it just felt like it was a level that we just associate with him. And it felt like more of a mental thing that was impacting his game to me.
I mean, 43 unforced errors, 28 on the forehand wing. Is there a bit of a problem? Because I was thinking about this, and we've been in this situation before with Alcaraz where he's lost his form and then he's come back and won a slam. Obviously, last year he didn't have much form going into Roland-Garros and Wimbledon. Then he really turned it up. But is he just a big match player, do we think? Do we think he's kind of becoming a player a bit like that who only really can turn it on and get that magic going in some of on the biggest stages in the sport? Because this felt quite lackluster from a performance perspective.
It did make me think about, the fact that when his game is on, he is, at times unbeatable. He is a Grand Slam champion. He can achieve records that not many players can, but his worst level is still a level that leaves him vulnerable to quite low ranked players. And I think something that he needs to work on with his team is this idea that when he's not playing his best tennis, he's still coming through with victories and maintaining that consistency. Because I still think his kind of worst level is leaving him vulnerable, to these sorts of defeats. And he needs to be able to win not playing his best tennis.
Winning ugly. I mean, before the clay court season commences in Europe, what do you think Alcaraz needs to work on and focus on before we go over to the clay?
Definitely, I think the consistency side of things. That is, I mean, sometimes you watch him play and it's a fantastic set of tennis. We even saw that. I mean, against Dimitrov, he won 2 sets with a loss of 2 games. He made short work of Shapovalov, who's had a lot of form, and then took a bagel set against Draper, having lost 6-1. So it does feel like there's a focus issue, and I think that always has been a little bit of a problem for him. Again, this is all like within the context of him being one of the most successful Grand Slam champions ever for his age. But I do think there is a focus issue that sometimes creeps in. He has always had a bit of a habit of losing sets in matches which he doesn't necessarily need to. And a lot of that has come from the fact that his serve hasn't always been the biggest weapon in the game. I think that's probably something that doesn't mean he gets the most free points. I mean, he only won 65% of points behind the first serve. So maybe he needs to continue working on that service action, which we know that he is working on. And hopefully that will bring a bit more success, because it does feel like when he's on the back foot, it's not necessarily a case that he's winning easily.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't alone. Daniel Medvedev went out to Jaume Munar, Mallorca.
One of your favourites.
And Holger Rune, Indian Wells finalist, went out to Riley Opelka. I mean, in a final set tiebreak, in fairness. But perhaps they all need to be playing some Ludo or doing those board games, because one player who is into round 4 nicely is Novak Djokovic, who's been, getting a couple of wins under his belt, which is actually a change for him in recent times. Although, he hasn't had to play, let's say, the highest caliber opponents. I think he played, Rinky Hijikata, a lucky loser just now. But I think,
lucky losers and Novak Djokovic, he's actually broken the lucky loser curse.
Wow. Could you explain the lucky loser curse, Joel, to our listeners who may not know more?
He's lost what? Last couple of, he's
Indian
lost
Wells, yeah.
He
lost 2 lucky losers.
Yes, in the consecutive years, yeah. He's really not...
So what a relief he's come through now.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a record that you want to have, the lucky loser record, that's for sure. But it seems like things are switching into gear a little bit. He hasn't necessarily faced too tough an opponent. I think if we're celebrating the fact he beat a lucky loser, it's probably not a testament to the fact that we think he's playing his best game. But
Can you see him winning the tournament though? Like, is his level good enough? Or sometimes you just need a couple of wins to get into it. But can you see, now that Alcaraz has gone out, Draper's out, is there hope that he could win the title?
I think the way the draw is unfolding in his half, he's definitely got a big opportunity. And I think actually the fact that he went out so early on in Indian Wells, he basically had 2 weeks with his team, with Andy Murray, to work on his game. And again, I think time is so important, when it is like kind of back to back. And we've seen the absence of time have a big impact on players who did really well in Indian Wells. Kim, as you said, all 4 semi-finalists now out. And actually, when you do have that time to be with your team, it can have massive dividends. And I think we're seeing this with Djokovic. And I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a deep run here, because Alcaraz is out. It feels like the bottom half for him it's open for him to make a deep run.
Are there any lucky losers left in the draw? We should check before we say that. Yeah.
Well, he's broken the curse now, so it's immaterial. He even ended up playing tennis with Robert Kennedy Jr., who is currently in the US government. So I think he's the health secretary.
I thought this was quite interesting. He tweeted, Novak Djokovic, first in tennis, first in integrity, first in courage. Guess who won this match? ?
Interesting.
I wonder who did win.
I mean, hard to know, but I'm sure they talked vaccinations when they met up.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being an anti-vaccine advocate, shall we say, which obviously
maybe that's what they bonded over.
I'm just looking at the post, and I'm looking at the tennis shoes both of them are wearing. I feel like Djokovic definitely has the advantage. It looks like
hiking shoes.
Yeah,
almost.
Kennedy Jr. is just wearing some loafers.
Yeah, well, maybe they just had a casual hit, but it's all about the photo op. But yeah, Djokovic doing well. We'll see how long that continues. Well, it's nice that maybe the board games are making a bit of an impact, and Andy Murray is having some positive coaching success as well. Let's catch up on the WTA side of things with Miami. We've had much more plain sailing so far, I think, for the top women, with Sabalenka, Swiatek, Coco Gauff all safely through into round 4. But we have had a couple of big casualties, I think it's fair to say. Madison Keys, Australian Open champion, she has lost to a Filipina wildcard, Alexandra Ayala, who's a former US Open junior champion, 19 years old, but won in straight sets over Madison Keys, probably her biggest win of her career. I mean, I have heard of Ayala because I follow the Rafa Nadal Academy on Instagram, and they've been kind of promoting her for a few years, celebrating her successes. She's trained at their academy since she was 13 years old. So this is quite a nice success story
protege?
For the academy. Yeah, a bit of a Rafa protege. She's actually going to be playing Paula Badosa of Spain for a place in the quarters. But yeah, did either of you manage to catch much of this match and, get a look at Ayala on the court? Probably for a lot of people, it'll be the first time they've seen her play.
I did get to watch the Ostapenko match, and there was a very warm handshake at the end. So I think that must mean that Ostapenko seriously respected her game that day, because she doesn't normally give a very warm handshake to players who she thinks didn't deserve to beat her. So I watched that match. I was very impressed with the way she hung in there. I think even more impressive is how she's soaking up the power from these big hitters and actually using it to her advantage. Lots of errors from Madison Keys. Again, I think that's kind of the story of some of the exits we've seen from top players, but take nothing away from her. This is huge. She talked about how big this is for her country, and the fact that, as you said, this is the first woman from the Philippines to beat a top 10 opponent since the ranking systems came into effect in 1975. That's very, very big. And I think she's playing for more than just herself at this tournament, it feels like. And the press is really getting behind this. So a very dangerous competitor. And I think it's always nice to see when a player who did have a lot of junior success is able to make the change, adapt to the senior tour, and actually get some results, because it's not as easy as she's making it look.
Yeah, absolutely. And Madison Keys, she got to the Indian Wells semi-finals, but was beaten quite comfortably by Sabalenka. So she's not in the best of form at the moment, but we have seen this a bit from Keys over the years. She has streaks of hot form, streaks where she's not so solid. Not a massive surprise, but I'm sure she wouldn't have liked to have lost to Ayala. But I definitely one to watch. I think I'm curious to see how far she could go.
Are we going to get a WTA 250 out in the Philippines to ride on?
That would be lovely.
Boost the profile of tennis out there.
That would be amazing.
Effect, hopefully. Absolutely. And then in other news, last night, we've got to touch upon this. Mirra Andreeva losing to Amanda Anisimova. So Andreeva's 13-match winning streak is now over. She lost in 3 sets in the third round. So she won't be doing the Sunshine double. Disappointment for her. But Anisimova, obviously, we know her pedigree, and she's had some fantastic big wins in her career as well. Did you catch this one? Any thoughts on Anisimova's victory? She will be playing Emma Raducanu next. So any hope for Emma based on what you saw from Anisimova last night?
I think Andreeva was a little bit injured in this match. She called the trainer, and it didn't look too good for her. But she did come storming back in that second set, and I thought she was going to kind of carry through her momentum. But this was I think an interesting matchup from the sense that these two players are the only players to have won a WTA 1000 title this season. They are form players in 2025, and Anisimova, similar to Menchik, she's just a big threat to kind of those top players because of that capability that she has. She might not necessarily be the most consistent player, but this season she's really, really bringing it. And again, no mean feat to snap that winning streak, given the caliber and the level of opponents that Andreeva has included in her victories.
And we did sadly see Andreeva post on social media afterwards on Instagram, sort of snapshot of a lot of the online abuse she was getting with like messages about her loss. Really awful to see. I think it really showcases it when players share those comments. I think she's now deleted that post, but really unpleasant that obviously players are getting this kind of criticism for, losing a tennis match.
Teenagers.
And there was also a bit of aggro. I think in the match, she kicked off a bit about Anisimova having a medical timeout. Anisimova unfollowed her on Instagram. So bit of hoo-ha going on there, Chris.
Yes, I can give you all the details. So that medical timeout that Joel talked about happened earlier in the first set, and that was at 1-2. But when the roles were reversed, and it was actually when Mirra Andreeva was serving, it was a case that a medical assessment was called for an acute injury. And so that was a blister that Anisimova had. So if it's acute, it happens. And it's stopping her from actually being able to play. So when you do have an acute injury, you are able to check and be assessed if you can continue or not, in a similar way to when Emma Raducanu, in that very epic moment, I mean, everything relates back to Emma Raducanu, but in that US Open final when she cut her knee, she didn't ask to be treated, but it was a case that it had to be treated. And this was a bit different from that in the sense that Anisimova did seek treatment, but it did get a bit spicy because Andreeva said, we all know why she's doing it. She made a really big deal out of it. But I mean, it wasn't the best time for, if you've got all the momentum, to have an injury timeout when Anisimova was actually up in that match. But it then got particularly heated on social media where posts were shared that seemed to shade the 17-year-old when said, we all know why 3-1 up was a good one, coming from 1-2 first set medical, crying with laughter emoji. So I have to say, I mean,
Meow.
I know, and Anisimova's a bit older than her, and she had nothing but good things to say about her game. But clearly, things are not as friendly off court after this one because it did feel a little bit unnecessary at the time.
Yeah, not what we want to see. We want everyone to be happy and getting along, which I know is not reality. But yeah, it's not nice when they take to social media to sort of get one up on the other player. So let's hope they resolve that. Otherwise, yeah, it might be a bit spicy when
one
they
to
next play
watch
each
in the
other.
future, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Anisimova is going to be playing Emma Raducanu next. Raducanu, I mean, let's talk about her. We alluded to it earlier, but she came through over McCartney, Kessler in her last round, Kessler retiring. But before that, she did beat Emma Navarro, world number 10, which is actually Emma's first top 10 win, I think, in a long time, and only the third top 10 win of her career. It was a 3-set battle. She did come through in her last set tie break, but she is through to reach, well, now the fourth round of a 1000 event for the first time, which is fantastic. Joel, how excited are you that Emma's got a few good wins under her belt and is looking quite promising at the moment without a coach? It's fair to say she's parted ways with the latest one.
I know, no coach, no problem. It seems for Emma Raducanu, and I was watching some of the match with McCartney Kessler last night, a player who has been in a lot of good form over the season. And although it was sad it ended in retirement, Raducanu's level was so impressive, particularly on her serve. I guess it was a little worrying in the sense that she actually won more points, I think, on her second serve than on her first serve. But certainly the way that she kind of brought herself onto the court after such a long battle against Emma Navarro, for a player who has been kind of talked about in terms of injuries. There's been times over her career where we were just sort of wondering, is she going to be able to finish the tennis match? But the way she kind of came onto the court, it's just impressive to me how, it feels like that is a thing of the past. And the fact she's put 3 consecutive kind of tour wins together, I think for the first time in quite a while, it just shows, I think she's getting back to kind of where she belongs. And I would ask the question, at the start of the week, we were talking about, she had a coaching trial. It didn't go very well and it ended after 14 days. Who next? Is there a question to say, does she need a tennis coach?
Oh, that's a big question. I mean, she's a very intelligent lady.
Free spirit.
I mean, she really does like to kind of take the best from the best and then see how she likes to use it. But I would say, is this not testament to the fact that the 14 days she did do with her last coach, Vlado Patinic, actually did do her some good, potentially, because he was very, very complimentary about her and said he would always be open to the idea of working with her again. So I'm not saying that her success is because of him, but I do think that if you do suddenly have a much better result than you have had so far this season, potentially, then maybe there is something, the fact that that training block did do some good. It could also be the physical trainer, because that Emma Navarro match was hugely physical, and it's clear that she's made some big ground there. So I don't think you have to have a coach. I think it probably is good to have a coach. I think that's why everyone does it. I think some top players who are very, very senior in their career don't necessarily need someone. But I do think that having someone who can consistently set out a plan for you to improve certain aspects of your game will help, because otherwise you'll be changing your game plans on a weekly basis. And I think actually Raducanu looked like she was going after the ball on return, like she was when she won the US Open and when she plays her best tennis, it's really attacking on the return. It's going for that big serve out wide. And it is playing front foot tennis because you have to really go for it if you have a game like Emma's, and you don't want to make it that physical because you have had physical issues previously. So I think you could say she doesn't need a coach. You could also say this could be because it went quite well, some of the tactical pieces from her previous coach, or it helped her realize that she doesn't want to do what she was told to do by the coach she had.
I mean, Emma Raducanu and Amanda Anisimova, they met actually at the Australian Open this year, where Emma won straight sets in the second round. So based on that and what you've seen in recent matches, where are your thoughts going into their encounter?
They're good friends as well. And I think that sometimes does change the nature of a head-to-head. So I do think the blister that Amanda had did not look pleasant at all. I think this is going to be a really close one. I think it could go 3 sets. I do think that Anisimova is playing the better tennis, if I'm completely honest. I think the last match from Emma, I wasn't as impressed as I think some people were, because obviously the player she was playing against did retire. And some of those moments, I don't think she really did, put her foot to the gas and just run away with it. I think it did. There was more of a tug of war than you thought that would have been. But Joel, you're looking at me and I'm thinking maybe you think Emma's going to get it.
Do you know what? I think she's playing some of the best tennis since that US Open triumph.
Wow.
There's something about
Wimbledon last year was pretty good though.
That is fair. That is fair. I just think there's something about Miami and the mood that she is in that I think she's playing with full
The Miami
of
mood.
confidence. The Miami mood. I think she's playing with full of confidence at the moment, but I think it will come down to particularly her serve and making sure that is as rock solid as possible, because I do think maybe Anisimova is looking at that first serve as a potential weakness.
Do you think Emma's going to get it? You have to say something because I've said something.
Don't sit on the fence, Joel.
Because when our listeners listen, I will sound very silly.
I'm going to say Emma in 3.
Emma in 3, Amanda in 3,
Raducanu in 2.
Oh, okay. Well, we're covering all grounds there almost.
As many bases as possible.
Yes. Well, let's take a quick break now, but do join us in the second half where we'll be discussing the PTPA, aka the Professional Tennis Players Association, lawsuit against tennis's governing bodies, the strangest head-to-heads going in tennis, and we'll be looking ahead to week 2 of the Miami Open as round 4 gets underway. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group. And it's time, as always, to kick off the second half with another game. Joel, over to you. You've got a nice par for the courts, I believe, for us all.
I've had to revert back to par for the courts because you were getting my mysterious player so quickly that I needed something that had
really got into your psyche, didn't we?
Yeah, it did. It was, so I've come back with something that has a little bit more longevity. So yeah, par for the courts, back and forth. And the category for you both is going to be Miami Open men's champions since 2000. There are 12 in total. So I'm already nervous. You're going to split and get 6 apiece, and we're going to have to go to a tie break.
That is a good question.
But before that, yes, Miami Open men's singles champions since year 2000. 12 total. Okay. Who would like to start?
Well, Kim's been far too good, so can I please go first?
You may.
Kim has got a smile. She's got a smile.
I don't know. I'm just thinking. Yeah.
Has Rafa won it?
A fun quizzing challenge. Well, maybe he has. Maybe he hasn't.
Oh, she's not going to give me anything.
Game face from Kim. The game face is on. Okay. Right, Chris.
Well, I'm
begin for me.
I'm going always low hanging fruit first. I know Kim doesn't like to do that, but I'm going to go for Jannik Sinner immediately.
Jannik Sinner is a correct answer, yes. Last year's champion. Defeated.
I was going to go for more sort of bigger names. Roger Federer.
Bigger hanging fruit.
Roger Federer is a correct answer, yes. He is a 4-time Miami Open champion.
Well, I think we should go for a 6-time. The biggest fruit. Novak Djokovic.
That is very good. Spot on. 6-time champion Novak Djokovic is a correct answer. So that's 2-1.
Oh, I've actually thought of a really good one, Kim.
Well, I've got one which might be a bit rogue, but I don't know. I'm sure he did win it, maybe. Or should I say him?
No, go for the ones you know, Kim. We've
Well, I
taught you
don't-
this before.
Okay, Daniel Medvedev. That's not my rogue one. By the
Daniel
way,
Medvedev.
but-
That is a correct answer. Yes, 2023 champion defeated Yannick Sinner in that final. So yeah, so we're 2 apiece at the moment.
I was going to go for Hurkacz. I think he beat Sinner a few years ago.
Hubert Hurkacz.
Yes.
That is correct. Yeah, 2021 champion also defeated Yannick Sinner in the final. So you're back in the lead, Chris. Kim, the pressure is back on you. Can you find another correct answer?
There's got to be some obvious ones we've forgotten.
Yeah, I've actually just thought of another one which could be possible. I'm going to go with my old school one, Davydenko. Oh, Chris's
Really?
face is like, what?
That is a correct answer,
Yeah,
Kim.
what?
Very, very good.
How
And
come you know that?
I think he beat Rafa in the final.
Ah, there we go.
I was going to say
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the link. That's the link. Do you know what year, Kim?
Was it 2009 or something?
Very close. 2008. Davydenko defeated Nadal 4-2 straight
Yeah,
sets.
not good.
So you are collectively halfway there, 3 apiece.
Right. I'm going to go for one that doesn't feel like it did happen, but it did happen. Similar to Kim's. I think John Isner won it. And maybe about
I think I was
years ago,
considering
something
him.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he beat Federer in the final, maybe.
I actually
John
don't remember.
Isner is a correct answer. Yes, 2018. He actually defeated Alexander Zverev
Oh,
okay.
in
really?
the final. Yeah, 3 sets, 6-4 in the third. So, Chris, you are back in the lead. Kim, over to you.
I haven't got any more, really.
I've
I'm
got-
just going to start naming famous players. Yeah.
I've got 2 that I'm considering, but I think the first one actually won Indian Wells. Or maybe not.
This is when she's going to bring out something truly rogue.
Mm.
And then
can
there's another
tell.
person from a bit longer ago. I'm going to go with the other person, actually. Thomas Berdych.
Thomas Berdych.
Oh, Kim.
It's an incorrect
Oh,
answer.
no.
I'm sorry.
Who was your other one, Kim?
Taylor Fritz? Did he
Oh,
win
no, he
it?
won
'Cause-
Indian Wells.
Taylor
Yeah.
Fritz.
No, it was Indian
Also
Wells.
an
Yeah.
incorrect
Wait,
answer.
Okay, well, that's fine then. 'cause they're
Thomas
both wrong.
Berdych did get to a final
Oh,
in
did he?
2010, and he lost to a player we have not said.
Oh, Andy Murray.
Andy Murray's won it. Yeah.
Is a correct
Oh,
answer. He's won
why
it
did I not say
twice.
him?
You could have
We
said
didn't
Andy
say
Murray.
Alcaraz, did we?
We did not say Carlos
this-
Alcaraz.
goodness.
Dear
And
me.
we also didn't say another Andy who beat Thomas.
Oh, Andy Roddick.
Roddick.
Andy Roddick. Yes,
Oh,
he
yes.
was a
I wasn't going back
two-time
as far as that.
champion 2004 and 2010. Couple of other answers to
Was the
complete the
Agassi
list.
one? Was
Sampras.
There you go. Agassi and Sampras. Yeah.
See, if only we could have one, one chance at a wrong answer and then continue. We would always
Chris,
win.
I
Kim.
can't give you one wrong answer because you're too good. You're too good.
It went well today.
Maybe that's
it did.
maybe that's a handicap. But yes,
I'm glad I
Sampras-
remembered Davydenko. That's made
That
my
was-
evening.
Kim
Yeah.
goes for the
That was
individual
very,
wins,
very
not the
good.
overall win at this. She likes to get the hardest, almost like the pointless answer for listeners
Yeah.
who like that quiz show in the UK.
Yeah. So the full list: Sampras, Agassi, Roddick, Federer, Djokovic, Davydenko, Murray, Isner, Hurkacz, Alcaraz, Medvedev, and Sinner.
So Nadal never got one, Kim.
No, he
I was
did
wondering
not.
if Kim was going to fall into that little pit
No,
of doom.
I know
but
that's the
you
one.
did not.
Well, one of the 1,000 events he never got, sadly. But yes, he got to some finals, but sadly he came out to the runner-up on all occasions. But thanks, Joel, for that. Listeners, let us know how you did. Were you screaming at your phone like, why are they not saying Andy Murray or Agassi.
Or Alcaraz.
Yeah, or Alcaraz. Why not? But let's have a look now at the mailbag. We had a community mailbag, actually, which we put out on our socials and got some responses coming through. And this is in honor of David Goffin now owning a 2-1 head-to-head record over Carlos Alcaraz, thanks to his win in Miami. So we wanted to know, what are the most surprising head-to-head records out there from both the ATP and WTA tours? Joel, I'm going to come to you first. What was the first one that came to your mind instantly?
This is good, isn't it? This is a great one.
This didn't come to mind, but I just did a little bit of research because I thought this was just too good not to bring up, because I know so much is spoken about the big three, and there is a player who has a leading head-to-head record against Federer, Nadal, and is tied with Novak Djokovic. And that player may surprise you, because that player is Dominic Herbrati, who is a 2-1 head-to-head lead against Federer. Kim, cover your ears now, a 3-1 head-to-head winning record against Nadal. And he's tied 1-1 with Novak Djokovic. So I'm going to go with Dominic Herbrati based on his stacks against the big three.
And a 1-0 against
Slovakian, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
The land of
Well,
Daniela.
he is still Slovakian.
He is still from there, yes. And he's got a 1-0 head-to-head record against Murray as well. So is he the GOAT? Maybe that'll be our next episode.
Is Dominic Herbrati the GOAT?
Yeah.
I mean, I like the Henman Federer record, actually. Well, actually, Federer, I think, is slightly ahead, but he won that by retirement. So actually, they're kind of level in reality. Yeah. And I think that's quite nice, because
that's how I like to see it, Kim. That's
it's
6 apiece.
But 6 wins is a lot, isn't it, when you think about it? That is quite a lot, isn't it?
So good on Tim Henman. It's just a shame he could never put that into, a Wimbledon title.
Did he defeat him at Wimbledon as well? Did I make that up?
I think he did.
I feel like he did as a young player, potentially. Maybe that's a stat that I think I've heard before. But these are all very good, I would say. But I think I can trump you with one of my favorites. And actually, no research went into this. I'm just a very sad individual. It is the icon that is Sybil Bammer, who has a 2-0 head-to-head record against Serena Williams.
Wow.
And
Sybil Bammer.
Yeah, wow. She did. Former number 19 from Austria. She was a lefty.
We're bringing out all the niche references here.
Yeah, I really hope if you do remember this and you were a Serena fan, you really will remember that these were painful. One was in Hobart in 2007 and one was in Cincinnati. There was a straight sets loss there. So that was particularly iconic. And then we are a bit biased towards the Brits here. I think everyone knows. But, I mean, Konta has a 4-0 against Osaka, which is pretty tasty. And actually, Joe Jury's one of, I think, only 3 players with a positive head-to-head against Steffi Graf. So a big one for the Brits there.
And, I mean, I was thinking about the Serena Sharapova head-to-head and how one-sided. So I suppose it's not maybe surprising, but well, I suppose surprising to some extent. It's so one-sided. 20-2. Very,
Monfils never
dominant.
beaten Djokovic. There's a few that are quite shocking, aren't there? Yeah.
Świątek, Ostapenko.
Yeah, 5-0 over Świątek.
Listeners did also tell us about that Dustin Brown Nadal one as well. That was popular.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we did have some listeners letting us know. No, Julie Olsen flagged to us Daniel Evans 5-1 over Kachanov, which is that's quite surprising.
He's bogeyman.
That's fantastic for Dan. And absolutely epic 137 mentioned Yuri Vesely's 2-0 head-to-head over Novak Djokovic. Which,
retire immediately.
Very impressive. So thank you everyone to who commented and posted in response to our question, which we put out earlier today. Always nice to when you're looking at head-to-heads and matchups. I mean, Alex de Minaur, Yannick Sinner is another one that comes to mind. Very one-sided, but never too late. I'm still gunning for the day that Monfils will win against Djokovic before he retires.
Will they play in Miami? Is that possible?
Maybe
they
this
are
weekend.
In the same half,
yeah. Okay. Well, talking about Djokovic, we've got some news that kind of concerns him as well. The player union that sort of he partly helped set up, the PTPA, they have filed a lawsuit against the ATP and WTA tours with a whole number of points on. It's 163 pages long. So if you want some heavy reading, perhaps you can dig it out and read through it all. But essentially, the lawsuit is criticizing the schedule, the ranking systems, control over image rights. And the PTPA say in this lawsuit they are acting on behalf of the entire player population by filing this lawsuit against tennis's governing bodies. When in reality, it's actually only a small cohort of the players actually belong to the PTPA who are involved. This is quite a meaty topic, isn't it? And it's quite controversial, and it's caused quite a bit of consternation and comments from around the tennis world. Chris, I'm going to come to you firstly. What do you make of this lawsuit? All 163 pages of it. I know you love a legal kind of suit, but have you read it all? Have you been able to access it and have a read?
I've read as much of it as I felt I needed to, Kim.
Okay.
There is a lot in there, but you do quite quickly realize that this is a bit of a kitchen sink lawsuit. I think they're really sort of throwing at the wall and seeing what sticks, because it covers all sorts of things, from the length of a season all the way down to, saying that players should be able to play exhibitions wherever they want to, that they shouldn't be have to play on this one tour, loss of image rights, all these sorts of things. And I think that there are aspects of it that ring true, which are around the fact that players should not be playing at 3 a.m. I think that would have made more sense to me if they'd limited what they talked about to be much more around, the fact that players are not treated correctly. And I think I would have had much more sympathy with this and much more understanding of it. I do think also some of the stuff relating to the ITIA, and the fact that they are providing some legal support for players like Tara Moore, I think that's where I really like the PTPA. But in terms of the wider piece here, I mean, it is a bit of a mess, if I'm being completely honest. I'm not a lawyer, but what I do know is that this is a very sweeping document which tries to put everything in as to why that these governing bodies operate as like a cartel, is one of the quotes that they say. And I do think that you can't say you speak for the entire player population, because actually you don't. There's a very small list of plaintiffs who are involved here. And so I think even the publicity of trying to say this, I think, is actually kind of concerning, especially when one of your co-founders, Novak Djokovic, is not one of them. It doesn't necessarily make you think that he was as confident in this document, or he thought this would be as positive a document. I mean, if he did, he would have signed it.
Yeah, because Djokovic is the co-founder of the PTPA, but with this lawsuit, he's actually said, well, there are things that I agree with, but there are also things I don't agree with. He said that some of the wording was quite strong, but that he, said that the legal team must kind of know what they're doing. And so he's not really agreeing with it all. He's not fully backing it, which is it is a bad look actually for the PTPA. I think that he's not actually fully behind this. And I mean, but I agree with him in the sense that there are some things, yeah, like as a general fan, like you agree with that shouldn't be happening, that we need to change. But there are other bits that, maybe
Bit of
aren't
a
the right
stretch.
battles to fight right now. Yeah. So he didn't sign the letter. And then other players who have distanced themselves, Carlos Alcaraz, who said that, again, there are things he agrees with and things that he doesn't, but he doesn't agree with the lawsuit, generally speaking. So it's caused a bit of a divide. And the ATP and WTA tours have come out to say that they reject the claims in the PTPA. They're going to obviously defend their position, and that, this is kind of causing a lot of unnecessary diversion from, the work that they want to do on the tours. What do you make of their response, Joel, that we've seen from the two tours?
Yeah, I think they obviously need to stand their ground, and as Chris said, I think that there are things that that are weaknesses for them that the PTPA to me have attacked, and I think that's fair. But I also think there are things that the ATP and WTA tours are doing at the moment that is in the players' interests. I think for me, it kind of comes down to this kind of conversation on this feeling that the ATP and WTA, they're working for their tournaments as opposed to their players, and it's almost kind of like, well, have they got the balance right there? Because we've seen recently with the things like reducing like the influence and the impact of like 250s on the calendar, making it more kind of focused around the premium events, the Masters events. And just having a really inflated tour, 11 months long, it sort of feels like it's there to basically kind of make as much, money as possible. So I understand from that kind of business perspective that, this is what they want to do. But I feel like if you go back to kind of the history of why these organizations were set up, they were there to kind of protect kind of players' rights. And I think over time, I think the fact that they are doing things to help players more now, I think acknowledges that. Even things, I know it's sort of helped by kind of Saudi Arabia, but like the WTA with their, new maternity policy. But I sort of wonder where this is going to go in terms of, I just wonder if it's going to create more animosity between, an organization that I guess is trying to do good, but going about it in a way that feels quite confrontational.
So more harm than good. I think if you're a player who's associated with it, you might actually be thinking, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to pick and choose which bits I do support. And actually, you can't get behind an organization that's trying to take down the tool that you're very much a part of, which I think would be quite tricky because there aren't any really, really top tier players who are involved in this one. So I do think one thing I was going to say, Kim, it does feel like it's at the moment, there is a bit of a time of a flux that's happening in terms of the fact that there is a look at the potential rescheduling of the calendar, a relook at the calendar. That rumor mill said it was presented to the Slam. The Slam said no. We are looking at these 2-week formats. Do you think that tennis is at a point where they feel like they might be able to change it because some things are up in the air and some things that we haven't questioned are being questioned, and they're trying to kind of see this is their opportunity to put everything in there and see if they can do something?
Yeah, I mean, it might be time now. I mean, that's why they've done the lawsuit now at this time, because everything's sort of a bit up in the air and there's room for change. And like you said, Joel, we've seen recent positive changes from the WTA tour with like the maternity allowance and program. So I think maybe they've sensed that and that's why it's come at this time. But I mean, rather worryingly, they've announced a second lawsuit because rumors have it, there's been reports that via the BBC that the PTPA filed the second lawsuit because the ATP were reaching out to players wanting them to sign pre-prepared statements that said that they didn't know about the legal action. So the PTPA have sort of are trying to get an order that prevents the ATP, WTA, etc., from communicating with players about this lawsuit.
Goodness.
So it's really is sort of causing quite a lot of animosity, divisions, and I think right now I don't know how long this process is going to take. When are we likely to see a resolution to this? Because lawsuits can drag on and on and on, and if this doesn't get resolved, I mean, do you think there's a chance that we will just see a splinter tour ever getting set up, or a breakaway, or will the players that form this kind of core not actually be bold enough to go all the way? Is it sort of smoke without fire? Are they willing to kind of really stand behind this 163-page lawsuit?
I don't think it will go that far. I'm not sure there's the support behind this. I'm not sure we will see this have its day in court. I'm not sure the PTPA would necessarily want that, because there's lots of things in here that I do think when you put a lot in there, there's a lot you can be pulled apart for. And this isn't like it's one individual incident like Yannick Sinner playing at 3 a.m. that they're talking about. There's so many different things that are a part of this. So I don't think we're going to see it in court. I think it might get thrown out, to be honest. But I do think it does make it clear that players could be earning more money by not playing on the tour. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that this is about, is the fact that they are the talent, but they have to play within the restrictions of these tours. And I think that issue is not going to go away. I think that's why it's so important, unfortunately, for Saudi investment to go into the ATP and WTA tours. Otherwise, there could be a rival tour set up, like in golf, for example. I think that is the threat, that is the worry. And the fact the tours are working with them probably means that the door will be closed for something like the PTPA to actually do anything else.
Yeah.
So where do we think the happy medium kind of lies? Keep it within the existing framework, but really push for change within that structure?
I think some stuff you could improve. I think there's some things that players would get on board with, and they talk about regularly, the scheduling side of things. I think that's where the wins can be. I don't think the wins are going to be trying to allow players to do whatever they want, whenever they want, for whatever money they want. And I don't think that bringing in some of the ITA issues with Yannick Sinner, for example, is the right place for this lawsuit. And the favoritism that exists potentially. It just feels like there's so much, it can't go anywhere. And I think if you want to change something, probably in any walk of life, you have to focus on something you want to change and almost lobby for that. And this doesn't feel like they're lobbying for something specific.
Yeah.
It feels like it's just going to be a lot of noise spread about.
And as you said, like going back to kind of the fact that they spoke about it being on the base of the kind of the tennis players representing the tennis players, when so few have really put their name to it, including Novak Djokovic. I think that's quite telling in terms of how many are willing to put their signature where their mouth is, and actually it's still quite small. So I still wonder whether, like, you can say all these things, but without that groundswell of support from the players, how much of an impact and influence is it going to have?
It's got to come from the players, right?
And I know we have the player councils with the ATP and WTA, and I do feel like there is more that can be done there. I feel like these structures have been around for ages, and I wonder how much influence these they actually have. But I feel like that to me is like the best way for change to happen. But it almost does make me think like it's sort of a bit too watered down and like too heavily regulated, and like for real change that's going to benefit maybe the players to happen.
Also, it's long, isn't it? Maybe they didn't have the chance to read it. If they made it a bit shorter, maybe more players would have read it.
These players have they have their own careers.
They're busy. They're playing board games.
So interesting.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see how that develops, and when the latest news comes out, we'll be discussing it here on the podcast. So do look out for that. We'll be lending our thoughts to it. But let's get back to the tournament in question, Miami. We are kind of finishing off round 3 as we're recording this. We've got all of the round 4 women's matches sort of lined up. So let's see what we are looking forward to for the remainder of the tournament. I mean, all our predictions, we said Alcaraz, then that's not going to happen. But we've said Swiatek or Sabalenka for the women's. They're both still in it. We've got obviously Emma Raducanu coming up today against Amanda Anisimova. I've just seen there is still a lucky loser in the draw as well on the men's side. Adam Walton of Australia, who came through today against Coleman Wong, a wild card. So maybe there is still a bogeyman for Novak Djokovic somewhere lurking. But yeah, have you got any particular highlights you're looking forward to over the next few days of the matches that we've got lined up?
Well, one's playing now. It's Colin Sabalenka, so I won't talk too much about that. But it seems like Sabalenka might not be letting Danielle Collins defend her title. But I mean, all interest has to be on Raducanu. I think I've got so much wrong that now I'm just going to, unlike the PTPA, they didn't focus. I'm focusing on Raducanu. I think she's going to do something very good in that match. I don't think she's necessarily going to win it, but I think that match probably has to be the highlight of this next round.
I'm looking at Alex de Minaur, who I had, I think, going quite deep in my final. He's got João Fonseca, the young Brazilian.
Yes.
So I guess João's got to hope those Brazilian fans haven't burned all their bridges with the Miami Open, and they're still there ready to attend and support.
Yeah. Some of your predictions are still in as well. Fritz is still in. Joel, you never know.
I mean, my predictions, but across the board, have not been great. But yeah, Taylor Fritz maybe could help me out. I'm also interested, as I say, Novak Djokovic's got Musetti tomorrow, could be quite interesting. And Kim Nakashima is still in the tournament.
He was great.
Yeah, really good
exciting.
Win. Going through the draw. I mean, there's not many Americans left in. The more fancied Americans are out. Ben Shelton's out. Seb Korda's still there. Nakashima's still there. Quite interesting.
There's a lot of depth there, which helps, doesn't it? Yeah, I would say I do think I have to take the Miami spoon of shame, because I did have Kenin taking out Gauff, and she got 0 games. So
yes, that was a double bagel.
We haven't even spoken about that.
I know,
double
so
bagel.
much has
well, I
happened.
thought you'd bring it up, but no one has, and now I've got to try and at least own up to it.
Yeah, that was an unpleasant scoreline for Sophia Kenin there. We've
Not
had quite a few
unfamiliar,
double
though.
bagels this year, but yeah, not unfamiliar. But no, I'm very much looking forward to the remainder of Miami Open. Perhaps we'll get a surprise winner on the men's side. I'm here for that. I think it could happen. Or perhaps Novak Djokovic will get back to winning ways. Let's see.
Yes, we shall see who comes up as champion at Miami Open by the end of the week. But we're going to wrap up our latest catch up here at Tennis Weekly HQ. We hope you've enjoyed the ride with us. Remember to subscribe to us so you don't miss a moment of ATP and WTA action. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all your favorite podcasting platforms out there.
And if you love what you're hearing, then be sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube.
And as always, stay connected with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. And if you're not on X, we're also on Threads. So you can see all of our tweets there as well. And look out on those channels for some of the questions we're asking you, like this week's community mailbag. And I'm sure we'll have plenty more for you on those channels. And if you'd like to submit a question for the mailbag, you can always email us tennisweeklypod@gmail.com or visit our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we'll be back next week for our Miami Open full catch-up, brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group. But until then, it's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Tennis Weekly.